Hi all, I am super excited to be in conversation today with Ramiro, who is founder of the Above Phone, technologist and activist, and just a hugely gold-hearted guy I am really blessed to have crossed paths with. So today I want to talk about this very particular technology and option for those of us who are interested in walking a more sovereign path when it comes to the relationship, because it is a relationship. Everything is relationships. And the way that you relate to your phone is one of the most important relationships to scrutinize. So those of you who have followed my journey over the past couple of years know that I actually reached an inflection point of concern, if you will, about privacy and data collection, and also an awareness that I was struggling with a frank addiction, as I would wager all of us are in many different ways, to my iPhone. And so I decided in December of 2020 to move my phone number to something called the Light Phone, and I detail this journey in the Sovereignty series. And I spent 2 years on the Light Phone before, and I have much feedback to provide about that experience. It was challenging. It was very, very challenging. And honestly, even more so as a single mom and woman, managing property and all the things to text on a tiny device that is barely capable of doing that felt at a certain point self-punitive. And I started to examine, why am I doing this now? And it did serve me to have 2 years of my phone number decoupled from the device that I, otherwise used for videography and as a camera, my decommissioned iPhone. It served me greatly. I learned to sit at a restaurant doing nothing while I was waiting for a girlfriend and just gaze into, the wild blue yonder. I learned to recognize all of the ways in which things get done, even when I'm not doing them all the time, right? So even when I'm not in the bathroom sending emails, which was the breaking point for me, when I was hiding in the bathroom to send, a work email so that my daughter didn't see me on my phone again. And I also, engage this process, which obviously I'm very passionate about, which is reconnecting to my power of choice. It then became a choice. And fast forward, these 2 years, and an interesting story I'll tell in another time about my daughter walking her sovereign path of relationships to technology, my teenager. And I discovered the Above Phone. I actually had learned about it at the Greeter Reset when I was there earlier this year, and was really excited about what Ramiro has been up to. I think it's an incredible option. And, now I have sampled the full menu from, I have 8 burner phones in my house, iPhone, and now actually several Above phones. And I am delighted to share more about this option, because I think it's going to be a perfect fit for so many of you. And he's been, passionately dedicated to bringing this option to you all. So Ramiro, welcome. And I would love to just sort of dive in and talk about why you moved personally and professionally in the direction of creating this technological option for folks, and why you think it's important, why you think it's a good choice.
Sure. So first I want to say thank you so much for having me, and for embarking on this journey with us, because you have to be adventurous to really even go off this trodden path. And I'm so excited for you to be switched on the Above Phone, and I'm excited to show your audience today what it's really capable of. And I'll say a little bit about myself. Back in the day, this is over 5 or 6 years ago, I used to be enthralled into being a software engineer, and I was a very different person, almost living a past life. And software engineers always idealize about working for one of the few big companies, these big tech companies, they're called FANG, like Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. And it was really funny. At the height of my career, I worked in New York City, And this is what I wanted to do. But at the same time, something felt empty and missing. And I had been on my journey for a while and also realized a lot of things were not right with the world, simply the systems that were built up. And I had started activism with projects like Freedom Cells, which is the group that holds the Greater Reset Conference that you mentioned. My friend Derek Bros and John Bush do that, and along with myself. And so I decided that when the pandemic started, I had a choice to make. It was either to continue working in New York City during the pandemic, and I quickly realized the entire frequency of that city changed so fast. And I didn't want that for myself. And I was like, okay, if I want to work outside of the system, this is that time. So I dropped. I completely switched and decided to pull all my effort into helping out activist movements. And that was a little bit hard at first. But I realized when it comes to sovereignty and privacy, it's these organic activist movements that need it the most. It's normal, everyday people that need these technology the most. Big tech doesn't need more of this technology. And so throughout the past 2 years, I've really dedicated myself to figuring out, hey, how is technology being used against us? And so my educational initiative, it's called Take Back Our Tech, and you can find out about it at takebackourtech.org. So I've written huge guides on how to shift your computer over to open source operating systems like Linux. And now I've also talked about how to shift over everything on your phone to open source operating systems and to alternative communications. And what I realized was like, wow, these systems that have been built up are really there to sap our energy. It's a really one-sided relationship. And the idea that really struck, like when I first started researching about this, is I like to call them abusive software systems. It's kind of like being in a relationship with an abusive partner. And I'm sure we've all kind of felt like that.
Exactly. And that is the way to think about it, is this very dynamic, active relationship, and there is consent involved, right? So anytime you are choosing to engage with the technology, there is a consent bridge, being built. So help us to understand the nature of what has been reclaimed and established through the above phone technology, and really why somebody would choose it over like a flip phone or a burner phone or a light phone or an iPhone. I mean, I think many of us sort of get, but it's never too many times that we can hear, what are the problems with, iPhone, Google, Apple, and what you and I have come to call the naughty applications. So yeah, maybe kind of give us a high level tour. And then I know that you pass you the screen, because I know that you have some slides to share, which I think are super helpful.
It really comes down to freedom from spying. It's informed consent in the sense that you should be informed and consent to anything you sent out of the phone that goes to third parties. There's also this aspect of transparency and freedom of choice of what technology you want to use. So when you go out to your favorite electronics store, you're usually presented with two choices, right? Google or Apple. It used to be Microsoft, but they're not a part of it anymore. It's kind of like going out to the polls, Republican, Democrat. I see how like it's all aligned in that sense. And what people don't realize is there are more choices. And unfortunately, with the two big choices that we have, is that they operate at a level of proprietariness, which means that they own everything. It's really they try to encapsulate every part of your experience rather than empowering others to step into that place. So let me give you an example. On the Apple App Store, developers who make the apps that you use and really are beneficial to your life have to give 30% of their revenues to Apple. And on top of that, if there's anything within the app that allows people to monetize and earn an income for themselves, Apple has also requested 30% on top of that, or they're not going to allow you to be in their app store. And the popular app Telegram just went through that. So it's very controlling. It's manipulative in that sense. And the underlying difference between the technologies on the above phone, and I'll kind of give an overview in a second, and Apple and Google, is that the code in Apple and Google is not transparent. You don't know what's happening there. There's no public way to go in and verify what they're doing. And we have to rely on smart information and security researchers to let us know, hey, by the way, we sat and observed the network requests of these operating systems, and we found that they're sending a bunch of data off to Google and Apple. We can only make educated guesses as to what that may be, but still so much stuff is happening in the background. Now, alternative operating systems have been around for a while, but just within the past 2 or 3 years, they've become fully functional. So they can give you all the features you need, and you can still have that trust in them. You can see every aspect of their code. You can observe the network requests and tie them to the documentation to make sure there's no other third parties being visited. So these are tests that we've ran with our own phones. And I'll just touch a little bit about what the above phone is. The above phone is, I'm super transparent about this. I did not write the operating system that we use on the above phones. They're de-Googled operating systems, as commonly referred to. We offer 3 operating systems: Graphene OS, Calyx OS, and Divest OS. So these are the leading de-Googled operating systems, which again are completely transparent, work and have interact with all the sensors on the phone, have calling, have texting, and really the ecosystem, starting from a level of openness and transparency, has allowed other developers to step in and be like, all right, hey, here's a free way to access the App Store. So now people can download apps without having to go through Google. So there are alternative app stores, which we can talk about. There are alternative communication systems that have been set up now. So really, in this free and open source ecosystem, things are thriving, and you begin to have that freedom of choice of what you want to put your energy into.
Amazing. Amazing. So let's dive in. Let's dive into your deck.
So we've been working on a way, all of this information is super, super technical. And we need a way to understand it for ourselves. And so we created this guide as a way to get everything explained. Explained in simple terms. So let's dive in through some of the differences between normal big tech phones and phones like the above phone. This guide, by the way, if you go to abovephone.com, which Kelly's going to have a link in the description, you can sign up to our email list and you get this guide for free in your inbox. So there's a number of concerns, and these concerns came up from security researchers studying Apple and Google phones. The last study was done in 2020, and it was done by Trinity College in Ireland. A professor there was able to connect these phones to a laptop and observe what happens when you turn them on, when you put the SIM card in, when you mess around with the settings. And he was just seeing, hey, what's gonna happen with these phones. Another important part to mention is when setting up the phones, he made sure to select the most privacy preserving options. So when Google asked, hey, do you want to offer additional analytics? Of course, he said no. Same thing with Apple. He set it on the highest privacy settings possible. Even with all this said, it was found that the phones would connect back to Google and Apple every 5 minutes on average. They would send a connection back for some reason. Now, okay, so it's like big deal, whatever. It happens every 5 minutes. The issue becomes when your phone is out and about, you're traveling around, your address, your IP address, where the phone is connecting from, is going to be associated to the nearest radio tower. And so that becomes a problem, because when you're being pinged every 5 minutes and you're moving around, you actually get a pretty good idea of your life and where you're going about in the world, where you may lay your head at night. And these are all things that investigators use to actually track people and follow them to the scene of a crime to see that if they might be the culprit. And so it's very dangerous for Google and Apple to get a sense of this. And mind you, I have to bring this up because the problem is that 99% of phones are one of the two. That's over 6 billion people. It's like somewhere between 6 and 7 billion people. So two companies, two corporations, and responsible for that much data. It's too much. With that amount of power, it gets corrupted, and it gets worse as we kind of see the other things that they're doing. So I kind of harped on that for a bit, but they do gather other information, right? Apple does this thing where it actually collects the devices on your network, on your local network. So this is a little bit unfair. So basically what happens is if you activate your location on an iOS phone, it'll send your location to Apple. Okay, maybe that's okay. But it also collects all the other devices on your local network. So if your laptop's connected, it'll send the MAC address of your laptop. If your TV's connected, all of that off to Apple. And that's unfair because if you have a friend come over and then, let's say you don't want this, you don't trust Apple, but if you have a friend come over and they connect to your Wi-Fi, then you also get added to Apple's mapping system. So I won't harp on this for too long, but I do want to say that the issue becomes when constantly there's a stream of data and there's these unique identifiers for all of our devices. Sometimes they correspond to our cell service, which could be our IMSI, which is what they use to track our phone number and our cell service, or it could even be our IMEI, which uniquely identifies the phone on a mobile network. And this is what you would, if your phone got stolen, you would actually report your IMEI as stolen so that the next time someone tries to use that phone, it wouldn't even connect to the cell tower. That's the level of granularity that both Google and Apple are collecting, and they're collecting it regularly and constantly. And there's also all these, our phones aren't just working by themselves. There's a whole host of services in the background, at least for traditional phones, that they need to run. So for instance, for Apple, there's Siri, there's iTunes, there's the App Store. For Google, there's YouTube, there's Hangouts, there's Gmails, there's Maps, there's Google Services. And these are, there's no really options for these, right? It's like take it or leave it. You're going to get all of us or you're going to get none of us. And so that's the problem here, is that it gets information about every single part of your phone that you use, and it's very, very centralized. So there's a number of different pieces in the phone there. And then the other aspect is that you don't have control of your phone. You truly don't. For instance, the applications I just mentioned, there's no way you can really uninstall them from your phone. You can't remove applications like Siri. You can't remove like the stock contacts off of Google. And unfortunately, those are the applications that have regular logging sent off to Google. The entire business model of both of these two companies is driven by ads. And it's kind of always been that way since day one, since Google released Gmail. There was always that expectation, hey, by giving you the service, you consent to us reading every single line of your emails. And so advertising isn't integrated into the operating system. Everything that you're doing is feeding into their advertising layer. And unfortunately, the apps are also tied into this. I used to develop mobile apps, and I remember as a developer, the first thing that kind of got pushed on you as they tracked that you were a developer and you're working on something like this is they asked you to incorporate third-party software development kits into your applications. And these would perform analytics. Sometimes they would do useful things for developers, like show people how users use your apps. Other times they would do advertising, get you a little bit of money every time it displayed a little banner ad. And the problem is there are a number of groups that did research into these. They call them analytics or advertisers, and they found that it's so pervasive to have these analytics and advertisers on apps that on average on the Google Play Store, for instance, you have an average of 5 third-party trackers. So that's 5 different organizations all gathering information about how you collect data, or curating how you might receive an advertisement. And the problem is that, hey, like the relationship you have with this app is, I'm giving this app this permission because I trust it. If I give it camera and microphone permission, I'm really only expecting it to be used with the application. But when you have third-party trackers in your applications, your trackers also get permission to use those. So it's this really hidden layer behind the scenes that we don't know about. And the biggest issue is, if you analyze these advertising and analytics companies, you'll find that most of them are also owned by Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. So I've written a really a good article about this on takebackourtech.org. It's called "Who Can We Call On?" And it goes into the multi-university study that they looked at something like 14,000 apps altogether to come up with these conclusions, and look at the biggest companies that own the analytics and advertising services, and found that it was a parent company, and the subsidiary companies were sharing information with their parents. So it's very, very tricky. They kind of hide their full control of it. So I mean, to recap, they're gathering a bunch of data from the operating system, and they're also running the analytics and advertising within the apps themselves. Now, mind you, it's not like Google owns all of it, but they do own a significant portion of it. So the unfortunate part is, when you put all of your eggs into one basket, as Google and Apple make it so easy to do, they can also take it away from you at a moment's notice, because you're not decentralized, you're not kind of independent. So this is a story published in the New York Times. I believe this happened this year. And it's a story about this father who his son had a rash on his privates, and he ended up taking a picture because his doctor asked him to. And he used all of Google services. So that includes Google Photos. And Google Photos automatically collects your pictures and analyzes them to run them on their database of child pornography. And Google just has the ability to do this, and it automatically shut down all of this father's access to all of his accounts and everything. It locked him out completely. And on top of that, it sent his information to law enforcement. So that all happened automatically. And that's super worrying, because we're supposed to have this. Our families are the one things we kind of hold as sacred, and now there's parties kind of infiltrating that and putting their own morality on things, which is misplaced in this sense. This is not anything wrong happening. There's also other terrible things that can happen, as in another case that happened with Google. They have this program called CensorVault. CensorVault is this new way to warrant people. They call it a geofence warrant. So when law enforcement knew a crime occurred, but they don't have any very good leads, they can use CensorVault, which uses Google Map data. Anyone who uses Google Maps will show up in this database. I've probably been at this database at one point. Even if you're an Apple user, if you use Google Maps, you've been in this database at one point. And what they can do is they can pick a date and a time and actually get a subset of the people that were there or in that location. And so what happened when Jorge Molina got turned up in a CensorVault warrant was he had an alibi, but they were relying on CensorVault data. They arrested him. He lost his job. He lost his job. He got kicked out of school. He lost everything, and it turned out he was innocent, and a friend had taken his phone and been at the scene of the murder. So he got wrongly charged and accused. And it was super powerful, because there's not really any transparency into what laws are going to use this data to enforce. So I personally believe if there's unjust laws, I think that we should not follow them. And if this information is just going to be aggregated into a database for other people to search into, that's the bad thing. And your freedom will be being free from these systems that just want to control your behavior. So it's things like these that are occurring on these big tech platforms. And these are just some very, very shocking examples, but it happens at such a wide scale that I urge you, if you are doing good deeds in this world and you want to be free, to look into de-Googled phones like the above phone. You absolutely don't need to get it from me. This is something that you could do at home if you wanted, and you wanted to do a weekend project. You could look at our site, abovephone.com, and look at the phones there. You can look up the operating systems, which we have links to. You could look at the apps. The software is all decentralized. So anyone who wants to put in the work can set one of these phones up themselves. What we do is we give it to you out of the box because we're all super busy and we just kind of want it, we don't want to hack anything together. We want it to just get there and work. And so over the past 2 years, we've been figuring out what are all the solutions that one needs to be free of big tech, but still be able to communicate freely. And then we can talk about that a little bit. But yeah, Kelly, you have any thoughts on all this crazy stuff that's been going on with big tech phones?
I love this. I mean, these are such powerful examples because we know that they get us through the bait of convenience, right? That's how we end up surrendering at the altar our most prized freedoms. And, first of all, you're painting a familiar picture, which is how it is that when we're tracked, traced, monitored, and our data is commodified to this extent, one of the great consequences is that we could be marginalized, canceled, or otherwise, digitally disappeared if we don't conform to the dominant ideology, right? But there are ways, which is obviously what you're here to demonstrate, to retain so many of the conveniences while also protecting one's own data, one's own privacy, and the details, like the behavioral details of your life decisions and communications. So this is just such an important issue. So thank you. Yes, go ahead.
So we've got the phone in front of you now. This is what you get out of the box with above phone. And this is a normal phone. It really is a normal phone. It can do anything your old phone can do. You can bring your existing service if you'd like. Really, it's just easy as sticking the SIM card in. Here, I've got it. I've got a Pixel 6 in my hand right now, just so you can see what it looks like. This is a slightly bigger phone, but we have smaller models in stock. And I'm just going to give you a little tour of the phone. It won't be too long of a tour. So this is the app screen. And you can see we have a bunch of alternative apps all grouped together for you. And there's ways to check your email. We actually offer our own private email service that you can use, or you can integrate this with whatever existing email service that you have, unless you're using an encrypted email service. Like, I won't name a provider, but there's ways you can download their apps. And you can download their apps through these alternative app stores that you see right here. So you can see F-Droid and Aurora Store. And these are actually how you can get apps outside of the big tech ecosystem. So F-Droid is the only app store on Earth that I know of that has a requirement where all of the code in the apps has to be open source and transparent, and also free and open source, which means that it gives other people the freedom to take that code and to publish it as their own and to make other apps out of them. So that's a requirement on that F-Droid store. And you can see there's all these different things that you can do with it, including syncing with other files. There's cryptocurrency wallets if you're interested in that type of stuff. And yeah, and so we've already taken all the best apps off of F-Droid and put them on the above phone. So there's camera, there's ways to take notes. There's even this awesome keyboard that you can use where you can swipe to type it out, type a lot faster. And so yeah, so out of the box, it has all of these things. I'll just demo a few things here. I believe I have this email set up. So this is the email for Above Privacy Suite. It uses decentralized email protocols, IMAP and SMTP, and it's your typical email. So we run a suite of services that you can get alongside the phone. Those are $100 a year, but they provide you email, they provide you a VPN, which I'll show you here in a sec. So that's our VPN. I will toggle it on, actually. I won't toggle it on, scratch that. But it's that easy. Once you have the phone in your hands, you just toggle it on and off. And yeah, it's because I'm not connected to the internet. That's why that's not working. And so we have email, we have a VPN, we have video conferencing. So this is a service that we run called Jitsi, and it's the alternative to Zoom. So you can see how easy it is. You basically just type in a room name. And then you can jump into that room and send that link out to anyone, to friends, family. They don't have to be on a Above phone. They can be on a different device. They can join from their laptop anywhere. And they'll join this call where there's no third party involved. It's just you're streaming directly into a server. And then after that call ends, there's no trace. So that's super cool. And that's something we use day to day with our support calls. We right now we do offer a free 30-minute support call if you get one of our phones, and we work with you to get everything set up, get your SIM card transferred, get your contacts transferred. And we also offer longer calls for people that do a lot of stuff with their phone. Another really awesome thing is our XMPP service. So XMPP is a way to send end-to-end encrypted messages anonymously, because you don't even have to submit an email to get this service working. It's completely free, and it actually offers audio and video calling. So you could have end-to-end encrypted audio and video calling. It's free because anyone can set up an XMPP server themselves. It's not like Telegram where you're just only have to trust Telegram. XMPP, you or your neighbor could set up a server, and in this case, we're your neighbor, and we've set this up for you so you can use it. So this is really great if you're looking for a truly secure way to communicate with friends and family. And what's even cooler is you can text out to the phone network. So I'll give you an example of this. So let's just say we have a number, like a phone number that we want to contact. So I'll just type the phone number in here, and we can actually start texting this phone number off of XMPP, off of this XMPP client that we have. And this works because we partnered with a company called JMP Chat, and they actually bridge the XMPP network to the phone network, and they give anyone who wants one an anonymous phone number. So you can pick out a US or Canada phone number, and you can make international calls with it. You can text people, people can call you and leave voicemails. And it's really great because one, it's anonymous, and two, it's $3 a month in Bitcoin. And you get your first month free if you're getting Above Privacy Suite through us, so you can actually test it out. And this is great. The number on my business card, if whenever I hand it out, that is a JMP number. So it's super reliable. We use it day to day. If you call our customer support, that's also a JMP number. So again, we're taking baby steps towards replacing all of the tools we're super used to. I do want to mention right here is by default, when you use phone numbers and phone calls and text messages, those are not private. That's not something we really got to dive into today, but telecoms are completely working with law enforcement and provide unfettered access to our calls and text messages. So what I'm showing you here today isn't necessarily for privacy. It is anonymous in the sense that you're not submitting your name or credit card information or anything to use it, but your calls and text messages, they can't be made private. There's no one who could make those messages private. So that's just the downside. So our philosophy is we're going to find ways to communicate alternatively, which would be XMPP, just native XMPP off of this, not messaging phone numbers off of XMPP. So Yeah, that was a really high level look at stuff. There's other things that we can explore another time. There's you can watch YouTube, you can watch podcasts, you can do pretty much anything you want on this phone, and all of the apps that you're used to, there are ways for you to get them on this phone.
Amazing. Thank you, Ramiro. And I would just add that you can, and first of all, it's like so amazing to be early shifters because we get all of this personal attention from you and your team, and that is a gift. So this is something you absolutely want to get in on now, to be a part of this early shift. And I'll just say that you can customize to your level of interest, ethics, concern, values. You can customize how much of the privacy suite you want to access, how much you want to be in the matrix or out. And that's what I found is there's really a lot of freedom within the freedom. You can make this what you want it to be. And so it's an extraordinary opportunity, that we have. And I think it's absolutely something that every single truth-seeking, sovereignty-oriented individual needs to try. I mean, if you're a smartphone type of person, this is the option. So I'm really excited to collaborate and grateful, that you have dedicated yourself in this way, and we'll make sure that everybody has all the info they need to proceed. So
Thank you so much, Kelly. Yeah, it's been a pleasure sharing this with you and working with you. And yeah, I can't wait to get the questions from your audience. And, we could do, I'd love to just talk about health too when it comes to the phone. And there's a lot of ways to limit all those notifications that we're getting. And the smartphone emancipation ebooks, that tolerance break you mentioned earlier, this phone is like doing that. It's really shutting off a lot of the things that weren't serving us. So yeah, I'm super excited to be exploring with y'all, and super grateful to have your partnership.
awesome. Thanks, Ramiro.